Story 1. They say you attract the things you are afraid of. Oh no, $1 billion, normal sleeping patterns, and someone who genuinely loves me. Story 2. Driving. As a kid, I was always relaxed and never understood how dangerous it could be until adulthood. Story 3. Swimming in the deep part of the ocean. I remember a giant water trampoline far out in the ocean in Jamaica. I did not even think twice about it. Now, I would be freaking out about sharks. Story 4. The ocean. I used to swim and surf almost every day. Now I'm scared of all the creatures that live there. I think getting surprised by a shark while snorkeling upset me. Story 5. Inflation. I got a savings account as a kid and regularly deposited money into it. I loved making those deposits. But now that I have graduated and gotten a driver's license, I find that I am losing more of my money to inflation than I am earning from my childhood savings account. That is very frustrating. Story 6. The sea. I love swimming and diving, and I spent my summers in the sea. Even when the waves were relatively high, I would still go in and have the best time. I would swim to the sandbank with a board and ride some waves, even if my feet couldn't touch the ground. Swimming at night was delightful. The water was. I will not do any of that anymore. I am perhaps too aware of all the unpleasant things that live in the sea and feel very uncomfortable if I cannot see the seabed while swimming. And forget about it if the sea is too rough. It is not worth it. I wish I could go back to those days when I loved the sea so much. Nothing really happened. I guess I just grew up and became afraid of dying. Story 7. Burning to death. I became permanently disabled in 2020 from a stroke that paralyzed my left side and left me wheelchair-bound. After coming out of a medically induced coma following brain surgery, I was placed in a nursing home for rehabilitation. During the first week, the fire alarms would constantly go off. Their policy was to shut the residents' doors so the alarms would be loud but then muffled with the door closed. Being unable to see into the hallway, I was unsure of what was happening and terrified of being trapped in my bed, unable to get up and burned alive. Sometimes fire trucks came to the facility, and I could see them from my window. I was later told that the reason they had to shut the doors was because they were burn doors, designed to withstand hours of fire before it could enter the room. However, if there were ever a fire, we would have died from smoke inhalation long before the fire touched our skin. So this did not ease my worries. It took about 2 years of living there before an incident occurred where we started smelling smoke after the doors were shut. The nurses and certified nursing assistants rushed into the rooms, helped those who could get up into wheelchairs, semi-dressed, and escorted us to the dining room. Those who were bedbound were kept in their beds and rolled to the dining room with their oxygen concentrators and 4 poles until the fire department cleared the building. Turned out the HVAC belt had broken, causing the smoke smell. It was a relief to finally discover another policy was in place in case of an actual fire. I later found out that fire drills involving evacuating residents from their rooms were supposed to have been conducted during the entire 4 years I was there, being left behind or forgotten about. Once, before a shower, I was stripped and transferred to a shower chair. I was unable to reach the floor while sitting in it, and my call light was on the floor out of reach. It was probably only for half an hour, but it felt like forever sitting there with the door closed, trying to call my certified nursing assistant. I said, Emily, please come back and help me." She finally came back and said, "I told you I had to go change the lady in room 213. Then I would be back to give you your shower." I replied, "I can't hear anything, so no, I didn't hear you." She said, "Oh yeah, I forget your hearing is worse than the elderly residents. Sorry about that, but you should have known I would be back." The shower chairs were made of PVC pipes with a toilet seat for the seat and were extremely uncomfortable, especially when the toilet seat got lodged between your buttocks. Emily was fired a few months later. Good riddance. Story 8. Chimpanzees. I thought they were so cute as a kid. Now that I know more about them, they are nightmare fuel. Story 9. Runaway inflation, societal collapse, fascism, losing free speech and habeas corpus rights. Issues like these. Story 10. I have become my mom. I am always scared and anxious about my loved ones getting hurt, getting in an accident, or falling ill. It is somewhat irrational. keeps me up at night and gives me heart palpitations. When my partner goes out for a walk, I get scared about what could happen. I live in a safe place, but I am terrified about potential accidents. I used to be wild, taking drugs and exploring abandoned buildings. How did I become my mom? Story 11. Constant fear that I come across as unpleasant. A part of me misses when I was unaware of my mental health issues. Story 12. Nuclear bombs, being killed in my home, starving to death, never making it to Ireland, becoming a citizen, and dying peacefully at the age of 83. Story 13. Guns. I grew up in the country. I was shooting with very close supervision when I was very young. I was given a boy's .22 at a later age. The Columbine shooting happened, and it didn't really change my opinion much. Bad people with guns were the problem. Law-abiding people had nothing to worry about. Then I got older, moved out of the backwater, read more, went to school, and saw the major rise in mass shootings. I opened my eyes and took in reality. There comes a point where, if you can be honest with yourself and examine your beliefs critically, you have to accept truths that may conflict with your worldview. I don't even own any firearms anymore, but I can't say I've turned a complete 180. I am very much in support of harsher regulations, certain things being banned, and so on. Things need to change drastically, and if you can't admit that, you need to look deeper within and ask yourself serious questions about what you believe about humanity. Story 14. Earwigs. I was a little scared of them as a kid, but the fear becomes much more real when you wake up to one trying to crawl into your ear as an adult. Story 15. When I was a little boy, I used to pick up wild tarantulas in Arizona. Now I cannot even get close to a house spider. I use the biggest jars I can find for catch and release. Story 16. Death and losing the people I love to it. Death does not feel real before you have experienced it. When one of my best friends died, nothing changes a person more than the front row of a funeral, and I stand by that. Story 17. Getting laid off and then being unable to pay my bills to the point where I become homeless and my cat's security is at risk. I have personally been homeless before, but never when I had pets. It is a relevant fear to have in this day and age. Story 18. Amusement park rides. I loved them as a child and rode multiple times in a row. Now, I am worried the ride will fall apart and I will die. Story 19. As a child, I would eagerly but politely engage with people. No one seemed to be someone to be wary of. I innocently engaged with strangers while my mother was nearby. When I was about 8 years old, we were at a carnival where there was a spinning paint machine, and a man came behind me. I barely noticed him, but my mother started screaming at him and chased him out of the park. I didn't know why, and she didn't tell me. Without going into too much detail, there were other incidents over the years. My mother tried to protect my innocence. As a young adult, my innocence got me into trouble, and my mother wasn't there. Since then, until this very day, I am scared of people, mostly men. I appreciate my youthful innocence, but I hate the caution and fear that I have now. This caused me to want to protect my daughter and warn her to keep her safe when I'm not there. What happened is that I took her innocence from her and made her fearful just like me. Yes, people then, woe people now. Story 20. Debt. I'm already broke. I don't need a permanent extra money leech on top of not being paid well. I can make the same argument for why I don't want children too. Story 21. Being an adult. I am 19, and thankfully, my father is generous enough to support me while I am going through college. However, I am terrified of what it will be like when I am on my own. Story 22. Falling in love with the wrong person again. I now pull back at the first sign of any interest beyond friendship. Story 23. Not having money, not being able to pay the bills at night when you know you could be vulnerable to theft or other dangers. Story 24. The ocean. I went scuba diving, snorkeling, and deep-sea swimming all by the time I was 12. Now, the idea of being out in the open sea like that freaks me out. Not just because of animals, but because of how dirty I feel the ocean has gotten due to commercial fishing and related activities. Also, as I've gotten older, I've become more mindful of the ethical issues that come with ecological tourism and tourism in general. I see why knowledge was considered a burdensome curse in the Bible, even more as I age. Story 25. Roller coasters. Cannot do them now. They make me so incredibly anxious. Honestly, at this ripe adult age, there is nowhere I would rather be than the ground. Story 26. Fentanyl. I used to take ecstasy all the time as a teenager. I miss it so much, but I am too scared now and not willing to risk it. I also worry that if I do it one more time, it will be one time too many and I could get permanently damaged. It is just going to have to remain a memory for me. Story 27. Bills. As a kid, I was like, I can't wait until I'm a grown-up and I can do what I want. Then I grew up, became an adult, and realized you do what the bills want you to do. Story 28. Dying, cancer, snakes, everything. My anxiety is terrible. I miss the innocent child I used to be. I am literally scared to do anything with my life for fear that something will go wrong. Story 29. As a child, it was peace. Now, if I am not conscious, it becomes a space where all the thoughts I have been avoiding show up at once. Story 30. Being from Louisiana. As a kid, I never thought about jumping into the murky water of the bayous. Now, if I cannot see, I am not going in. Sharks, jellyfish, alligators. Story 31. Chickens, especially roosters. I was about 16 and visiting my biological dad. He asked me to go with the kids to feed the chickens. There was no warning that they fly at you, pecking and plotting my demise. I had never feared them until then. As a child, I had no fear, but after that day, I just cannot help but see their beady eyes waiting for their revenge. Story 32. Men and boys who are not my fiancé seeing me naked. Puberty hit me hard when I was 11, and I have been terrified of it ever since. My fiancé has explicit instructions to forbid any male personnel from the delivery room whenever we have a baby. No exceptions. Story 33. Breaking my hip or any other part of my body. I broke many bones as a child and never changed how I played. Now, it feels ridiculous. Story 34. As a child, I loved water, pools, lakes, and oceans. Now that I am older, the vastness and darkness scare me, and I have no idea why. Story 35. Gory shows like Dexter. I enjoyed that show and other bloody content. I work in healthcare now and I do not watch bloody shows because I know too much. However, I still do not mind it in person. Story 36. Flying on a plane. As a child, it never occurred to me that something could go wrong. I do it because I love to travel, but I hate it. Story 37. Doing certain maneuvers, that is, cartwheels. Now I worry that I will get hurt and that will impact my ability to get to work. Story 38. Falls and slips. I have seen people become quadriplegic because their head hit the ground in a certain way. Story 39. Flying. I thought it was fun when I was a child. Now, if I have to fly, I have to take tranquilizers. Story 40. Small spaces. And magnetic resonance imaging where the hole was too narrow for shoulders and we were looking at a shoulder injury. One shoulder flat, one lifted. Technician said to tell him if any issues. At some point he left. It got hot enough I started feeling like it was burning. Ended up inching out of it. Tight spaces can freak me out now. Story 41. Flying. I had no issues going on an 11-hour transatlantic flight at 8 years old. Now I get anxious at the thought of a 2-hour domestic flight. Story 42. Freedom. As a child, I loved being able to do whatever I wanted without major consequences. As an adult, it is frightening. You have to save enough money for retirement, get enough sleep, take care of your health, and manage many other responsibilities. However, now there is no one to micromanage your schedule to ensure everything gets done. You have to figure it out yourself, and you pay the price if you miss something. Story 43. Heat. I used to be completely fine with fire, but now anything over around 130 degrees Fahrenheit makes me really cautious. Story 44. Death of a loved one. As a child, I understood it to some extent, but I did not truly grasp the depth. After losing my husband and our mutual best friend at 22, I now worry daily about who is next and how I am supposed to go through the rest of my life continually losing people in an instant. Story 45. Spiders. I thought they were so cool as a kid, but my longtime family friend, neighbor, and coach was bitten by a brown recluse spider and almost lost his leg. Story 46. At the fair or amusement parks, where you only get the over-the-shoulder harness and no extra seat belt at your waist, just the harness, it locks. But if you are skinny, you can easily fall out of the seat when you go upside down. I just grip the shoulder harness tightly. Story 47. Heights, or more accurately, a fear of falling. I was fearless as a child and would climb anything. I cannot believe I am not dead. Story 48. Losing my parents and being alone. As a kid, I always wished to live alone. That's a basic kid ideology. I always wanted my parents to go away, not in a bad way, but I just wanted them to live somewhere else. Now, it is my biggest fear to not be able to live with my parents forever. Story 49. Clusters of holes freak me out. It is called trypophobia if you want to look it up. Story 50. Hurricanes and any rough storm can be very intense. I lived through a major hurricane a few years ago, and now I become on edge during hurricane season. I used to love storms and wanted to chase tornadoes while growing up. Story 51. Tarantulas. I held one as a child and let it walk on my hand. I felt fascinated. I don't think I could do that again. Story 52. Phishing scams and viruses are common. When I was a child, I thought, wow, free RuneScape membership. All I have to do is click this link and enter my address, name, and date of birth. They definitely had good intentions and did not sell my data. Story 53. Making the wrong decisions. I am interning at a probation office to gain insight into law enforcement. I want enough money for my family while having a fulfilling job. The only issue is that in most law enforcement jobs, you do not get a lot of time with family. There is a lot to consider, and I am always wondering if I am taking the right path. Story 54. Fears at age 10. Clowns, quicksand, tornadoes, going to the doctor. Fears at age 22. Accidentally making an error on my taxes, my family dying before me, going to the doctor. Story 55. Some spiders. As a kid, I wasn't scared of really any spiders, and now I'm scared. The only exception to this rule seems to be the jumping spider, and it's only if the spider is actually there next to me. I'm fine with pictures of them. Story 56. Falling and going the other way. I am nowhere near as fearful of quicksand as I used to be when I was young. Story 57. Freak accidents. Planes falling out of the sky. A brick coming through the car window at high speed. A sinkhole opening up underneath my bedroom. All of these things actually happen, so I do not consider it an irrational fear. Story 58. Let us go through them all. Dogs, the sun, water, the dark, the over-the-horizon ringtone, my reflection, cars, other people, and finally myself. Story 59. The government. As a child, nothing ever changed. Adults became happy or sad when the president changed. As an adult, it was overwhelming. Story 60. Homelessness means losing a place to feel safe and keep belongings. I am not able to keep my beautiful elderly cat, who depends on me. I do not even have a car to live in. Story 61. Chimpanzees. Me as a kid. He funny monkey. Me today. Travis and Gom chimpanzee war post-traumatic stress disorder flashbacks. Story 62. Oh my. I had a rose-hair tarantula when I was a kid. No problem. She would crawl all over me. 18 years later, I have arachnophobia now. Laugh out loud. Nice twist. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.